And we are back on Raw 12:51 AM. I'm your host, Will Kingswood, and we're back for the Warwick F1 show. This week, it's a race review, and we're looking at the Mexican Grand Prix, a race won by Max Verstappen in the end, but wasn't looking as good for them on Saturday, but obviously we'll dive into that, and I can't do it on my own. So first, I'll introduce my guest, and first, obviously, ever-dependable co-host, Jack Rowe. How you doing, Jack?
Say that. Next week I'll die of COVID or something. I'm good. I'm glad to be here. Maybe not so glad to be talking about the Mexican Grand Prix. It was a little dull compared to what we're used to, at least, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a problem with the altitude, really. It's quite...
Yeah, because the track should work, right? There's plenty of overtaking opportunities. And it's not like we saw too... it's mostly DRS straights, right?
Yeah.
That's where the overtaking is. But we still saw a decent amount, but something about it just means it's not quite right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, but we'll come on to that. And we've got two more guests as well. So first, I'll introduce...
Curious.
So I didn't forget your name. I just was wondering which of you was going to come in.
So...
I mean, what did you think of just the race in general?
It was a good race in terms of tension, and the atmosphere was, very impressive for seeing Checo's, he's still in the sport this year, and he's able to, show off and get on the podium to all his adoring fans. So it was very impressive to watch, but the racing was lacking in the middle, I would say.
I think that was the thing, and I think everyone liked seeing Checo on the podium. But our final guest is Manas. How are you doing?
Hey, yeah, so... Sorry. Manas. I had fun watching the Mexican Grand Prix. It wasn't, the worst race of all time. I think, our expectations this year have really been raised, haven't they? So, if this was a race last year, I think we would have been decent race, but this year, I suppose it got a little boring in the middle, but we still have some stuff to talk about, so I think we'll have fun.
Exactly, and we'll come back to talk about it after we play a quick song. We're back for the Warwick F1 show, and I guess we'll start at the start. Really, the only thing that happened. When you saw that start, I mean, what were each of your thoughts? So, Bottas getting away slowly, Hamilton getting away quickly, and then just a run down to turn one, Verstappen getting alongside, and then obviously eventually getting ahead.
I mean, it went nuts at the first corner, 3 wide. I can't remember. It was Bottas on the inside, wasn't it? Of course it was, because he was the one that clipped Ricciardo. But I think Hamilton was worried about Bottas more than he was about Verstappen, and Verstappen just went flying around the outside. Normally when you have 2 cars alongside, they're fairly close, and one of them has to shove each other out of the way. But there was nothing from the Mercedes. I felt like there could have been a little bit better defending from Hamilton.
Yeah, although. I'll come to you two. Hamilton didn't really have that opportunity to defend because obviously he's gone for the inside because he's got such a good start. He can't go to the outside, or I think their plan was originally to slipstream one another, and then Verstappen can't get that benefit. But Hamilton got such a good start that Bottas got such a bad start that they're alongside each other. They can't do that, and then Hamilton's on the inside and really can't defend from Verstappen, and maybe thought that Bottas, or especially after the race, it seemed that he thought that Bottas could have squeezed Verstappen a bit more, sort of like a Vettel Hamilton in 2019.
Wasn't it? I'm sure it was Bottas was on the inside of the 3, because he clipped Ricciardo. He was the one on the inside who clipped Ricciardo on that. No?
No.
All right, I'll shut up.
Bottas was in the middle, and I don't think he had such a bad start, really. It was just that he should have squeezed Verstappen on the outside, because Bottas and Hamilton were on the inside and on the dirty part of the track, and so they couldn't really brake much later without risking a lockup or probably even crashing into Verstappen, to be honest. So it would have just been... It was the latter part of that straight where Bottas messed up, where he should, instead of squeezing Hamilton, he should have been trying to squeeze Verstappen. And if he had done that, I think he could have pushed Verstappen out and helped Lewis he probably helped himself and Lewis to maintain P1 and P2 instead of just allowing Verstappen to go all the way around the outside and just walk away to a victory, really. And also, if he hadn't, if he had been in that position, I don't think Ricciardo would have tagged him on that in the first corner.
Yeah, I mean, Manas, even Bottas getting over to the left, getting on that racing line and getting that grip might have been a better strategy. And it just seemed that the start went arguably the worst that it could have gone for Mercedes.
Yeah, you would think like Mercedes would have like rehearsed all the possible scenarios going into the start, but Bottas clearly missed out on like Verstappen. I don't know if like they even predicted like Verstappen to make such a daring move on the outside, because it did look like it was a bit risky, and maybe Mercedes thought that he would have backed out because it was three into basically two, but yeah, Bottas just maybe Bottas as well. Like we all talked about how he broke a little earlier, and then that probably caused like the Daniel Ricciardo like shunt. But I felt like Mercedes kind of blew it on the start, and like they didn't like really anticipate Max going on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem was that Hamilton just got too good of a start, that he couldn't slot in behind Bottas, and then once you're sort of like 1-1-1, then if Verstappen comes out of the slipstream, then he's immediately going to start falling back. And it's almost like they would have been better off if Bottas had either got a worse start, Hamilton gets fully ahead and Bottas cuts behind him, or Bottas gets a better start, and then they do what I guess they originally planned to do. But it's sort of like just the worst of both worlds. Hamilton got a good start, got alongside, but then couldn't get further ahead. And then that just allowed Verstappen, who hadn't had that good of a start, he'd had a decent start. I think it wasn't exceptional. It was probably fairly average in terms of like just a start. But then once he gets that slipstream, he can come in. And then once he goes to the outside, he's on that racing line and can just sweep around the outside and get like into first, a position he never relinquished.
I mean, I think on the F1 the stream, when they were showing it live, they had a little table on the right where they showed how fast Hamilton and Verstappen's reactions were going into the first corner, and I think Hamilton was only something like 3 thousandths faster than Verstappen was. So they both had an equally good start. I think it was just Bottas. He should have been on the outside and stuck to the racing line, because Hamilton could have covered off the inside himself, and that would have meant there was the only space for Verstappen to go would have been to right on the inside, and that would have been a risky move for him. I don't think he would have been able to do the sort of late braking that he's well known for if he was on the inside instead of on the outside with all the space.
I think the elephant in the room is like how much Bottas is putting into this championship. Not the constructors, because like he's still got to go and do that, but trying to get Hamilton an 8th world title, because he's been, I don't think snubbed by Mercedes is quite the right term, but he's had a tumultuous few years there, and now he's leaving. He's got no reason to like, sacrifice everything for the next season, or has he? I don't know.
I mean, I think he just maybe made a mistake, wasn't expecting Verstappen to get alongside. Maybe he thought he'd left enough space, maybe, like, we don't really know. But anyway, it went from bad to worse for Bottas when he goes round the corner, or goes round turn 1, and gets clipped by Daniel Ricciardo from behind. I mean, the stewards, I feel like we never really got a resolution. It was sort of just, there was nothing like racing incident or no action necessary. It's been noted.
I think they did. They're pretty sure they just said it was,
I might have missed it.
Might be like just noted. I think.
Yeah, I think they said it was a racing incident, no justification. It didn't pop up on screen. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that will be.
But I did hear Crofty say about it. So,
but I mean, do you think that was the correct decision? Do you think Bottas maybe turned in too harshly, or did Ricciardo make a mistake? And especially based on what we've seen over the last few races, I'm thinking Turkey is probably the prime example of that. A car coming on the inside, clips the car on the outside, who then spins. Like, why do you think Ricciardo wasn't, or do you think Ricciardo deserved a penalty? And if you don't, or do, why do you think he didn't get one?
Yeah, I think like I was very surprised at the decision because, like personally for me, I felt it was a turn one, lap one racing incident. But judging as what's happened over the past few races, where we've especially like Turkey, where Gasly wasn't as much as fault, wasn't as much to blame as Daniel Ricciardo was in this instance, and it wasn't even properly investigated. So I really felt like maybe like to me it was a racing incident, but to the stewards we are always looking for that consistency that just hasn't been there this year, and this was another glaring example of just drivers just don't know what to do and what's going to be investigated, and that's going to be very difficult going into the future, and people will be taking risks even though they don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah, I think my favourite thing is to whinge about the regulations, right? And I think you kind of hit it on the nail on the head. I don't think the regulations are quite perfect, and I think they're definitely not being implemented in the way it's written down. So my perspective on it is that Ricciardo technically was in the wrong when you look at where he was, because he clearly wasn't alongside, right? And Bottas has taken the racing line. But it was perfectly avoidable from Bottas. He's cut to the inside, and okay, yes, you know, racing drivers want to save every 10th, but this is the first corner, and he's not trying to gain. That's not going to gain him position. There's no way. He's dropped behind the first. You know, he's dropped behind the other two, so he should just take the centre line and just play it safe. And yeah, okay, maybe Ricciardo shouldn't have 1/10 of an inch of his front wing in there, but I can't really blame him for being there, because that's what happens, right? We saw at Kota as well early on. I think it was Norris on Ricciardo and one of the Ferraris, and he was about to take that, but Sainz is there, and it's because we get these massive, really wide straights into these sharp corners. That's just what's going to happen. So yeah, rule by rule, maybe Ricciardo was in the wrong, but really Bottas should be avoiding that, or trying to at least.
Yeah, I mean, one theory that maybe could be a thing is that the FIA have seen that both of the drivers have been disadvantaged. So Ricciardo's made a mistake, but he's been sort of like hampered by his own mistake. Obviously Bottas has also been hampered, but then, and as opposed to like a Turkey where Gasly not got away with spinning Alonso, but he didn't have that many consequences, so needed to have something that would punish him for his mistake. Do you think that's maybe a thing that could be true?
I think it is part of the reason why. I mean, they do say that they only take into consideration the incidents themselves and not the consequences of them. But in reality, that most times I feel like they see where each of the drivers end up after some sort of contact, and then they just apply the penalties on afterwards. So seeing as both of them just were pretty much just side by side, well, following each other after they had to take their pit stops, they probably didn't feel the need to do it. But then again, Bottas got stuck behind Ricciardo for the rest of the race. So if he had been given a time penalty that he had to serve, maybe Bottas would have had a much better race for that weekend, really.
Yeah.
Even like Michael Massey said in Austria, like, because there was a lot of controversy regarding, I think, Lando's penalty for knocking Perez off. Yeah, he did say that. Yeah, I feel like the stewards took into account like what happened after that. Like Lando got away clean. So yeah, he did admit that sometimes they do take a look at the outcome to when they decide the penalty. And I don't know if that's fair. We can argue about this until the cows come home, but I don't know what's the correct way to sort this out, really.
Well, I think you have to say they do take the consequences into account, because realistically, if you boil it down to the barest essentials, it's a driver sticking their nose in and causing another driver to spin. Realistically, you could probably summarise like the Hamilton Verstappen Silverstone incident in that way, even though maybe it's a lot quicker. But obviously that one was given a 10-second time penalty. This one's not been penalised. Even Gasly and Alonso, that's sort of the same thing. That one got 5. I think it's quite clear that they do take the consequences into account. But then just the final part of the start, then obviously Bottas has spun, everyone's trying to avoid him, and Esteban Ocon becomes the just destroyer of worlds. I'm sorry, how did that car... So in Austria, that car... It's the tiniest of touches on its front suspension. It breaks. He's out of the race. He has he has a Haas of Schumacher and the Alpha Tauri of Yuki Tsunoda, properly whack the front two tyres, and he's just completely fine. It just makes no sense.
It's just to do with where the F1 cars are strongest, right? It's the because he's not hit the suspension sideways rather than front on. That's just where the loads are going to be. They have to be able to cope with extreme acceleration and deceleration, so they'll be strong. I guess laterally, would you say? Forwards to backwards. Yeah, I mean, that was a hell of a highlight, though. You're going to see that a few times over before the year's out, I'm sure. Yeah,
I mean, they just had a ready-made thumbnail for the race, didn't they? Just Yuki Tsunoda's car about 5 foot in the air.
2 out of 3 rookies gone.
Yeah, I felt quite bad for Tsunoda when that incident happened, because if he had done what Gasly, his teammate, had done, and just taken to the grass, he could have avoided all of it and probably had a decent race. I mean, he did have the soft tyres compared to everyone else, which I think everyone else had softs, mediums. I mean, not mediums. So it could have turned out badly anyway, but he had a decent weekend other than the Collie incident. And considering his recent turn up in form, I felt pretty bad for him, and I felt like he could have shown people what everyone had seen in Bahrain as to how good he is, even on a race day.
Yeah, and we'll come back after the break and we'll talk about that quali incident, about Red Bull in general, and I guess the Mexican atmosphere, which you have to say one of the best atmospheres of the season. Welcome back to Raw 12:51am and the Warwick F1 show, where we're now looking at Red Bull's weekend as a whole. So we'll start, obviously, practice, just standard Red Bull affair. I think they were fastest by about half a year in practice 1 and practice 2, but then qualifying rolls around. It's looking fine. They've done Q2 well, but then it comes to Q3. And especially, I want to talk about the second runs in particular. So Perez is ahead. He is on his run. He gets told, or he encounters Yuki Tsunoda, who has driven off the track because he's been told that Perez is behind him. Perez gets distracted, goes off the track, and then Verstappen, who's following him, sort of slows down, or obviously expecting yellow flags, which, to be honest, I'm not sure if there was one thrown, but realistically, probably you'd expect it in that situation. And then afterwards, so they end up 3rd and 4th, which is a result that they really weren't expecting. They were expecting 1, 2. I think most people were expecting at least Verstappen on pole. And then people have a go at Yuki Tsunoda. I mean, what's your take on the incident initially? So Tsunoda going off the track, Perez making the mistake, and then Verstappen obviously being impacted by that.
I mean, it's an odd one. It's an odd place to go. I will, I'll definitely give people who think it's Yuki's fault that, but he is off the racing line. No, actually, it's a weird place to go. You go to the other side of the track, right? You go to the inside. It's cut back, but he's got plenty of time. I think he should have done that. I can understand why Perez is... panic is not the right word, is it? But he's reacted to it. He's been like, someone's off the track. I think he should have been on the inside. I was about to try and justify why he's there, but no, he should be on the inside. He should be.
I mean, realistically, that's probably the bit of the track where it's most difficult to let people overtake. If you're off the track, realistically, you're out of the way. And the FIA knows when a driver's going off the track to dodge another driver. I'm pretty sure I've seen, Silverstone is probably the one I'm thinking of. You've seen people cut maggots or Beckett's, because it's really difficult to let people over. And if you've got a split, if you've got a second to react to what you're going to do, sometimes you just react, let's go off the track, slow down, and we can come back on a bit safer. Do you think that Yuki Tsunoda was at fault? Because if I'm looking at it, that's probably what I'd do. You go off the track, but then obviously there was the dust, which was an issue. And when you're driving at that speed, those split-second things you're not expecting can throw you off, as it did with Perez.
I think that it's less Tsunoda's fault and more like the race engineer's fault for not telling him early enough that the Red Bulls were coming on the hot laps behind him. And if he had been told that, he would have probably much further down the circuit and probably in the pits by then, to be honest, because he was tootling along at 50 miles an hour, which is nothing for F1 cars for a solid 20 seconds, I would say.
Yeah.
So I would say it's mostly the race engineer's fault, but even for him going off the track, I don't think that was too bad of a choice. I think the main issue was the dust was kicked up from it, and if there was no dust kicked up from him going off track, I think Perez would have had an all right lap. I don't think he would have been ruined. Same for Verstappen as well. So I think Tsunoda just got a bit unlucky there. He couldn't really go many places that wouldn't have been distracting for any of the drivers coming in from behind, but he put it in a place that he thought would be good, and it ended up just, I wouldn't say ruining the laps, because I felt like for some reason or other Red Bulls just didn't turn the tyres on for their last laps, even the laps they had done previously. So I think Karun Chandok had gone through on Sky Sports, who would have, if Verstappen had completed his lap, whether or not he would have ended up on pole, and he came to the conclusion that he wouldn't have anyway. So could Verstappen have got P2? Maybe, but at the end of the day, I think it was just Red Bull messed up somehow. Tsunoda was in an unfortunate place and made it even worse, and really it was just an unfortunate incident that was saved anyway by Red Bull performing really well on Sunday. So
yeah,
in the end it didn't matter.
But I guess before we come to Sunday, we go to the post-qualifying reaction, and especially what Christian Horner said afterwards, that they'd been, in his words, Tsunodaed. I'm not the biggest fan of Christian Horner, and I think that's putting it slightly mildly. But even objectively, that isn't that's really bad. You shouldn't say that about a junior driver who's gaining confidence. He's been performing better and better over the last few races. He's not had the best of seasons. And as he's gaining this confidence, he does something that is fairly reasonable. He goes off the track to try and avoid the Red Bulls. It's Perez that makes the mistake, maybe because of an unintended consequence of Tsunoda's actions. But then Christian Horner comes out and says that he puts the blame, or he scapegoats a driver that's part of the junior team, that's part of AlphaTauri, part of the feeder team into Red Bull. It maybe be a bit more understandable. I'm not saying it's all right, but it maybe be a bit more understandable if it was let's say, an Aston Martin, an Alpine, even a Ferrari, because they're not part of. And then you can say, I've been Sainz, I've been Vettel, I've strolled or whatever. But but he's part of the junior team, and it makes no sense to me why you would scapegoat a junior driver like that.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Even if it was for some reason Tsunoda's fault, which I don't think it was at all, it was just one of those freak incidents even, that just happened. But whether or not it's his fault, you don't make a comment like that when you know it's your own driver, and then it's basically like saying, oh, we're gonna pin it on you, that's why we're not on pole, which is really not what's happened. And I just felt like he did apologize for it in the end, but I don't think that's good behavior for any team principal.
I think it's really indicative of the kind of attitude Red Bull has towards their academy, right? It's it's the, I think, uber competitiveness. There's no nurturing. It's you pick up the 10 best drivers you can get your hands on, and then whichever one of those comes out looking rosy, you'll take on for a year. And if they continue looking good, then great, they'll do a Verstappen, they'll go and win. But we've seen really good quality drivers come out of the Red Bull scheme looking absolutely shocking, and it's because of that, right? Something has to change. Well, maybe they like it. Maybe they've seen. Maybe they think it works. But from my perspective, I don't think it is at all.
To say to that, actually, I thought Red Bull had changed their ways for a bit, actually, considering how Albon, I am assuming that they had pushed Albon to get the Williams seat. So I thought, you know what, Red Bull are actually looking out for their younger drivers and are trying to get them good careers in F1. But with comments like these, it does make you doubt the team as a whole again. Even if they are a really good talent scouting team, I feel like they should treat their drivers a little bit better, considering they are in F1 for a reason in the first place. So yeah, it's a little disappointing.
Yeah, but obviously all comes good in the end. They take a 1-3, and I'll bring Lewis Hamilton in here. Obviously, Mercedes get that 1-2. That's I think, beyond their wildest dreams of what they thought. It doesn't pan out for them in the race, but do you think that they are happy, and maybe Red Bull are not unhappy, because obviously they've gained, or Verstappen's gained points on Hamilton? But maybe, do you think that before the weekend, if you'd offered Mercedes a guaranteed second place, only losing 7 points to Verstappen at a track that was probably their weakest on paper? Maybe you could say Monaco was worse for them, but on paper it looked like it should have been better. Do you think that they take it, and do you think Red Bull are maybe slightly disappointed that they couldn't have made up more points on Mercedes?
Yeah, I thought like it was like at the end of qualifying, I wasn't that like surprised for Red Bull, because I personally thought third is better than second, and even Verstappen said it, like he'd rather be starting P3 than P2, and we found out in the race why he said that. So if you offered Max whether to start P3 or P2 at the start of the weekend, he'd have taken P3. So I think it was fine for him. But compared to like the general question of you asking of Mercedes losing 7 points only, I hope they were still aiming for P2 even when they knew they were down, because like I thought they think that it's Verstappen. They think it's Verstappen, Hamilton, and then it's Perez, even if Red Bull have the advantage. So I'm not sure if they would have just guaranteed taking the second place if you offered it to them on Friday.
Yeah. I guess obviously you're always hoping Hamilton somehow wins, Verstappen bins it in a wall somewhere in the stadium section. Well, where was Bottas? Well, actually, we'll talk about that as well. I mean, the fastest lap attempt from Bottas, so bringing Mercedes in. Verstappen backing up by, I think it was about 3-4 seconds to ruin Bottas's fastest lap. Then letting Bottas pass, but then complaining on the radio for blue flags. So he has to let Verstappen pass, ruining that lap, and then he has to pit again for tyres. I mean, that's some quality like gamesmanship. But do you think that, like I said, do you think the Mercedes in the end, obviously in the end they're not happy because they got 1-2, they should be doing better, things like that. But before the weekend came, if Hamilton only loses 7 points to Verstappen, do you think they're happy?
It's a really difficult question. I think they're kind of like, okay. I don't think it's like we'll take it or not, but Mercedes are at the point where if you count which tracks are Mercedes tracks and which tracks are Red Bull tracks left, it's probably fairly even for the last 4, right?
I'd say, well, I mean, we can run through it. So Brazil's tended to be
Red Bull,
but I'm quite surprised both teams seem confident there. So maybe we put that in like the 50-50 camp. Qatar, we have no clue. It's similar to Bahrain at the start of the season, even though it's about a million years ago. They were fairly similar, so maybe that's a 50-50 track.
Bahrain's traditionally been Mercedes track, though,
Yes,
hasn't it?
maybe that's more. Maybe let's give Qatar to Mercedes. Saudi Arabia, I'm not even convinced we're going to be there, but that's what. So what? Fast sweeping corners.
Yeah,
Mercedes.
that's
Mercedes.
yeah, and then
I mean, Mercedes were probably slightly quicker.
Yeah.
That's just
it's close though. Both of those two are going to be very
Okay.
close, and then
So I think the first three we've got seem quite close, and then I'd say Abu Dhabi is probably the most Mercedes
yeah,
out
so
of the four.
I still don't think they're going to be like 19 points up. So there's going to require either a mistake from Verstappen or a very good drive from Hamilton. That's why I think it's kind of like, okay, this isn't the very good drive from Hamilton that we needed. We needed to take points in a Red Bull stronghold. That's not been this weekend. But we haven't lost a title. We haven't chucked it in a wall somewhere, and we're no longer, we're not 37 points down going into the last four races of the season.
Yeah,
So
I mean-
that's why it's such a difficult question.
Well, just finally, so we've got 4 races left. If we assume what's happened most of the season, it's been 1-2s in either way. I mean, we've seen that. Like no team has, or no, there hasn't been a 1-2 at any race except obviously Italy, where Verstappen and Hamilton both retired.
Yeah.
Realistically, one of them probably would have been the 2 to the 1, maybe 1 and then 2 Ricardo.
Something like that.
So if we take that as a 1-2, there's 28 points sort of on the table. So if Hamilton wins, he gains 28 points. But if Verstappen wins the next race, it's 26 to almost 20. I get you could,
21
you
plus
could probably
3.
say 24.
24.
That's and then obviously, but maybe if he wins the sprint race and seconds, maybe it's only 6. It's 25. But still, it's over that 7 point per race threshold. Do you think that Mercedes now have to win every race to almost guarantee or Hamilton especially has to win every race to guarantee their chances?
Yeah, especially I think Lewis now has to do what Max has been doing in the past years, which is like trying his best every race. Not like he has to like let go of the percentage game and maybe like commit to sending it more now, because he knows that Verstappen after like next race, Verstappen only needs P2 for the rest of the races. So maybe Lewis is trying to take more risks now, and I see him like even in like Abu Dhabi, like maybe even sending it on turn 1 or something like that, because we all know what Lewis will do to win. We've seen like 2016 and what happened on the final race and how much he was slowing down just to let Nico Rosberg fall out of the podium. So I think Lewis will be a lot more daring now, a lot more risky now, as compared to what he was for the rest of the season.
What I would say is Hamilton has to win one of the next 2 races, because he needs the momentum to swing back in his favour. And if he doesn't have that for the last 2 races of the season, I don't think he has any chance of winning it, really, because Verstappen, unless he crashes, which I don't see happening without some sort of freak incident, Verstappen has been the driver of the season, like so far. He has pretty much made very few mistakes, and so in order for Hamilton to beat that kind of performance, he needs to be the best he's ever been. And considering how good he's been for the last couple of years, I think he can do it, but it is going to be a tough one. And although he was not very pleased with the result, well, he was content with the result in Mexico, but not. You could tell from his voice on the radio that he was frustrated, and with all the comments that he was making, that he feels like he's losing it. They're losing the championship, but I think he's got a chance, and I don't see him backing down, as Manas was saying. So it will be very entertaining for us, to say the least. Yeah.
Really feels like we're getting into the business end of the season now. But first, we'll come back after the break, talk about just the Mexican atmosphere in general, maybe a bit of Checo Perez before coming on to our Brazilian GP predictions. And we are back on the Warwick F1 show, just talking about final part of the race. Well, yeah, I guess the final part of the race. They're talking about the podium celebrations and just the atmosphere at Mexico in general. Best atmosphere of the season? Or obviously the ones, we seem to have the big three in terms of atmosphere. You've got Britain, you've got Zandvoort this year, and you've got Mexico. I mean, which is your favourite?
I mean, yeah, I know it's not this year, but Australia also provides a really good one. You can't take the atmosphere out of the race, right? So Zandvoort for me, while the atmosphere is incredible, there's something in me that's just like a bit. I've got full respect for Max Verstappen's driving ability. It's just like I'm not a personal fan of him, and there's something about the Verstappen fans and the Hamilton fans that get me. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna say Mexico, just because there's not that connotation with it as well.
What about Monza, Italy? That is a different sort of vibe. I mean, we didn't have it, the sort of celebrations that we had when Leclerc won it a couple of years ago. This year when Ricciardo won, but I could feel that same sort of vibe from Mexico with the partying and the insane celebrations from literally every fan on that circuit. It was quite incredible to see. I think Mexico is definitely going to stay just from the fans alone, even if we don't have some of the best racing there.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you mentioned the atmosphere, and that was made better by Checo Perez getting on the podium. I mean, that was just lovely to see. You could see, like, his dad was so happy, and his like, adorable little son was just, like, sort of a bit bewildered. I think he was just a bit bewildered. He didn't really know what was going on. But then you saw, like, the photo of him on the podium. And I think you couldn't really feel, like, annoyed at that. Obviously, I'm a Hamilton fan, so obviously I don't want to see Verstappen win, but like I'd much rather have Checo on the podium just to get that atmosphere, get those celebrations in.
What about Big Shaq on the podium? I think if he was there as well,
that would have added icing on the cake, wouldn't it?
How do you know he wasn't the one like lifting the car up?
But yeah, I mean, I think atmosphere wise you'd have to say that Mexico, I sort of know what you mean with Zandvoort. Maybe it's my Hamilton fan bias coming in. But Zandvoort feels a bit intense. It's just like flares everywhere. It's all orange and
orange smoke everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go against everyone here and say Zandvoort is a great vibe. And I'm a Hamilton supporter, so yeah.
Oh no, Zandvoort looks really good. But I think if I had to pick one to go to, maybe as a Hamilton fan, I don't think I'd survive Zandvoort. But
I think Zandvoort is probably. I think you're right with saying it's the most intense out of all of them, but I think that sort of pure orange passion is definitely something that F1 I feel has been missing from with the lack of Ferrari success recently. So I do think it has its place, and I personally love seeing it. Yeah. Even if I'm not a huge fan of the flares. Especially during the races when the dust can get onto the track and it can be hard for some of the drivers. So,
I mean,
it can.
This is for everyone. Do you think that will keep some races on the calendar? So obviously we talk about the Monaco glitz and glamour. Miami's probably just going to be an American Monaco. Like you'll get the glitz and the glamour. I'll say this every week until they do it, but that race should be at night. It's a car park, you can light it up. But then you've got these races, like you've got the Zandvoorts, the Mexicos, that aren't necessarily as good races. Maybe Mexico's got unlucky, maybe Zandvoort will get better. Probably won't, but then you've got the fans that come in. You've got the fans of Checo, you've got the fans of Max, you've got the fans of Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton and George Russell at Silverstone, the Ferrari fans. at Monza. Do you think that sort of thing will keeps races on the calendar? Just having that like intense fan support, because obviously, I mean, it's like indicative of popularity. So obviously, if there's loads of fans there and the atmosphere is really good, then clearly the race is popular, like we saw in Austin. But there's just like that added level of popularity, and it's like all for one driver. We refer to like home races in a way. Obviously, all the British drivers have Silverstone. But for like Max Verstappen, is that like another level of home race? Like you're driving around and like 95% of the people you see are supporting you. Do you think that sort of thing is what F1 wants on the calendar?
I don't think Zandvoort's on there because it's a good circuit, right?
Yeah.
Like it's gone renovations. They didn't start that because they wanted to bring back the history. They want engagement from Verstappen fans. They want engagement from Hamilton fans. They want engagement from Perez fans, and they get that engagement from being at the circuit, not necessarily people watching on TV. TV deals are great, but if you have 50 million viewers or 45 million viewers on TV, that's not going to make much difference. But the difference between having 50,000 fans at a track and 150,000 fans that are waving flares and screaming and shouting, and that makes huge financial sense for them.
Yeah. Any last words?
What I would say is with limited media, they have been more focused on making F1 better for the fans, and so I do see them just chasing the money almost, where the fans are going to be the main reasons why races stay or are dropped from the calendar, even if some tracks are better than others. I do think Zandvoort's a good track, and I hope it gets better next year with the new cars. But with a lot of tracks that are older, they're not wide enough for a lot of the action that the current cars, even next year's cars, are going to be providing. So the fans will be what keeps them on, and it won't be really the racing action.
Yeah, and it should be a good track to return to next year. But that's sort of the end of our review of the race. Not really that much of an interesting one, so not much to talk about. But after the break, we'll come on to our predictions, and then and we are back for my final part of the Warwick F1 show, looking at our predictions from last week, 2 weeks ago. So our predictions post what race was? Oh, post USA. Oh, it's all going so quickly. What I'll do is, obviously, me and Jack know who predicted what, but our two guests here, Kurias and Manas, don't know who predicted what. So I'll read them out so I'll just read them out in a random order. I guess you decide which collectively, as a set, like you think are better. So we've got the first one.
Better means like you get more points for like being out there and being right, but then being right is kind of the most important.
Yeah, being right is the most important thing. But if you go for that Hail Mary and then get it, then obviously that's going to matter a lot more. So firstly, we have this is number one. So they went for Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc podium. Red Bull take the constructors' lead. Alpine double points and a red flag in the race or quali, which actually came true. And then number two went for Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, in that order. Verstappen Grand Slam, not quite, unfortunately. Red Bull top all of Saturday and Sunday. Also, all of the Saturday and Sunday sessions. So it would have been P3, Q1 to Q2, Q3, and then the race. And then Vettel top 8, which I think also came true. Where did he finish?
57.
Yeah? So, thoughts?
Second set looked a little more accurate.
Yeah, the second set was, I think, the one that was closer to what actually happened. So I would say that was a better one.
Yeah.
Say that again, because the mics were off. Sorry about that.
It's the second set, we feel it's just a little more accurate.
That's what I like to hear. There we go. Second set.
I gotta say, the constructors' lead was so close, right? They're 1 point behind.
Yeah, I think
that would have made the difference, wouldn't it?
Alpine, do they have one driver in the top 10?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alonso.
Where did
Yeah,
Ocon finish?
was 12th or something like
12 or
that.
something like that?
I
Yeah.
can't remember.
So the thing is, I feel like we were both close for our 3. We both got 1 right. So Jack got the red flag in the race, or red flag in quali. I got the Vettel top 8. And we were both sort of close in the other 2. Red Bull 1 point behind, Ocon finishing 12th. Verstappen gets maybe just the win, but he's close to all of the... He could have, he's close to the leading every lap. I think he only led, every lap except 3. Close to the fastest lap, close to all of that. And then Red Bull top all of Saturday and Sunday. I think, was it Q3 was the only exception? Were they topping Q2 as well? I didn't watch qualifying.
I think it was just Q3 because maybe.
I'll look it up.
Actually.
But
I think Bottas was fastest in Q1, wasn't he?
Bottas.
Because I think they did multiple runs. Because I think.
Right, yeah.
Should we
Red
do
Bull
the
just
predictions
didn't
for the next race, and then we'll come back to that?
Yeah, I'll have a look now. Yeah, Bottas was fastest in Q1.
Nice, I got something right. I remembered things.
And then it was Verstappen in... Oh, no, it was Hamilton in... Oh, no, it was It was someone.
Gasly, was it?
No, it was... Hamilton was fastest in Q2. Mercedes were just better in qualifying. I didn't watch it. I don't know. It's qualifying. But we come on to the predictions for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Now, I haven't actually thought of any, which is a fun thing. But I'll let you go first while I hastily think of some predictions now. So, Warwick F1 Society side, take it away.
So for the podium, we've got Verstappen, Perez, and Tsunoda. So we're thinking Honda's going to go big.
So Verstappen, wait, sorry, did you just say Tsunoda?
Yeah, he's
I would like to say I have no part in any of this. I have peered over their shoulder and cringed, and that's it.
A
So
full Honda podium. Has that happened before?
Yeah, it has. I think.
well, maybe back in the 60s or something.
No, I think that was a race.
I don't know. I can't
Thing
remember.
is, I want to say it has, but I can't
I feel like Gasly
remember.
has been on the podium.
Gasly has been on the podium.
Oh,
Yeah, but not with both Red Bull.
I think maybe Perez or I don't know. One of them wasn't on there.
There was a Honda.
That-
Oh, it might have been the Honda 1-2 I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
In Baku.
Yeah, it might.
First
I think,
Honda 1-2 in
yeah,
a
it
while.
was. Yeah. I went. It was kind of my opinion to go for Tsunoda. I feel like he's gonna bounce back on the Christian Horner comment and just do
That's a
something
bit more
ridiculous.
than a bounce back. That's like
That's like straight
it's
up.
like rocketing back.
He's gonna rocket into Tsunoda. I mean Horner's face. but
Then your other 3.
Alonso gets the most overtakes for the weekend.
So-
go sprint race. Yeah, for the whole weekend. So we get the overtake award or whatever they call it now.
So for the weekend.
the
So
weekend.
Alonso most overtakes weekend.
I think it would be something that you'd know because if
Because they put, I mean, there is a list of, I mean, I can just, there's a list of them. They do like the crypto,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So we can just look at them afterwards and see what it was.
It's going to be a fully dry weekend for all of the sessions.
Okay.
So,
Jinx.
yeah. I mean, now you said it. It's not happening.
How dry is rain? As in,
No one.
how
else is
many
on the-
spot? Like, are we allowing a slight bit of leeway on spots, but they don't go onto wet
Yeah,
tires?
no
or
one puts on the inters.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
we'll go. No wet tires used.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
no
you can go
wet
for the
weather
last-
tyres, not like because I mean, if you say wet tyres, then you might think wet tyres.
I'm not.
Okay,
My brain.
if you know,
my
if you
brain
know
isn't that.
if you know what
developed.
you're talking about, then that's fine.
And the last one.
true.
And
The last one we've gone for Lewis mechanical failure.
oh, you think that first time since Austria 2018, his car
Yeah.
packs up, and
It's about
probably
time.
his championship hopes with it.
His hashtag blessedness is gonna be lost. I think.
Maybe
It
not
is
for
coming.
Verstappen, but you'd have to say that a Hamilton failure now is probably game over.
Pretty much,
Very
yeah.
much, yeah.
100%.
So Lewis mechanical failure. Right, I'm gonna go optimistic. I'm gonna say Hamilton victory. Oh, he'll bounce back. he's not done too well in Brazil in the past, so this is his year. This is his.
Happening.
This is his. He overtakes someone at the final lap. We get a new is that Glock. We get like an is that.
Mazepin?
It's not gonna happen. That's a bit far. So I'll go Hamilton.
I was up to 11th during Mexico, so you never know.
I know. I saw that.
Shortly before falling to 18th, was it?
He nearly got lapped by Latifi.
We
That's
don't
how
like
bad he
him,
was.
but he is in a Haas.
Yeah.
That car is awful. I'm gonna go. So Hamilton. Then I think it's gonna sort of be the calm. Oh, we got the sprint race as well. Oh, okay. I've thought of something. So I'm gonna go Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen. And I'll explain why in my next predictions. Because my first one will be a Hamilton-Verstappen collision in the sprint race. I think that now the title is getting so close, they'll come together and collide. But in the sprint race this time, and I think Verstappen drops to the back and then comes forward.
Maybe because it's getting so close, Verstappen's going to think twice whenever he goes for a move, and any incident's not going to happen. So you never know when it comes to incidents, I feel like, especially towards the last stage of the season.
But it is Max at the end of the day.
I think...
He's full
Yeah.
thing.
I'm going to go Gasly P4. Because he is really... Gasly is like, I'd almost say, the top 3 drivers of the season. We'll do one right at the end of the season, but Gasly, I'll go Gasly P4 because I'm conscious of the time and Jack's going to kill me if I don't move quickly. And then we will go for Alpha points. I think they'll go score back to back.
Which one?
Yeah, I probably should be. Alpha Romeo points. You
Just either of the drivers in the points?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I think there's... Oh, yeah, we got the sprint race, don't we? So it should be an interesting one. Or hopefully. None of the other sprint races have been that fun.
There has always been a collision when there has been a sprint race. So you could be on the money with the collision bit.
But yeah, so we've got all of our predictions there. So that's it. We've sort of finished off my...